Welcome to the Jedi Chronicles series. The host today is Master Yao, founder of the Grand Trine system. He is a Tantra extraordinaire and accomplished in several natural life systems. After completion of the Marmor Project in 1997, he was raised to the rank of Master. He was later inducted into the International Circle of Masters. Master Yao is the author of 6 published books and many private select manuscripts. I've known Master Yao for 2 years now, and in that time he has helped me become the best version of myself possible. And I hope you really enjoy this series.
Good afternoon. This is Master Yao. We return again to the Chronicles of Master Yao. Today we're going to talk about a subject near and dear to the heart of men, semen retention. There's been a lot said about it. Some people say it's a hoax, it's this, it's that. But more and more science and alternative medicine has started to confirm it. And here at Grand Trine we have a lot of men with experience doing it. And they experience quite a bit of benefit from it. What is it? Semen retention. Well, I think in an earlier episode we talked about second puberty, yes. And so, what's the fuss about? What is second puberty and why is it important? Well, we basically said most men don't finish puberty. So you would think that'd be important. And when you are, going back as a Jedi and bringing your faculties online to become this extraordinary person, semen retention is one of the skills that come online, and that's one of the most exciting, believe me. I can tell you that it took me quite a few years to figure it all out and do it. But after I, learned it and started practicing it, it really elevated me in so many ways, performance-wise, of course, health-wise, and it affects your mind. It really does. What is it? Semen retention is when you induce a different prostate action at the point of orgasm. So, when you get ready to orgasm, the prostate gland in men normally starts pumping and puts a stream of semen into the ejaculation stream. But the prostate can do other things. It doesn't have to do that. For instance, the prostate can recirculate. It can pump, but instead of pumping it out, it pumps it in the other direction. It pumps it in towards the body. This is called recirculating, because the semen, instead of combining with the sperm and going out, it instead, some of it goes into the spinal column, some of it goes back into the gland, and some of it goes into different parts of the body. And it gets reabsorbed, some of it, and some of it just recirculated. But it makes a big, big difference in what's going on. So, some men develop this ability naturally over time, normally, but most men don't. They should. In a natural society, in a natural culture, in a very natural environment, men should naturally develop this without any help, but that's just not how it works today. What are the benefits? Well, to start off with, you can avoid unwanted pregnancy, because when you're practicing recirculation, no semen comes out. Sometimes, and for the most part, not a lot of sperm either. Some sperm can make it out, because the sperm is coming from the testicles, not from the prostate. Key point. So, but when the prostate circulates inwardly, when it pumps inwardly, almost no sperm comes out, because there is no ejaculate for the most part. There might be some leakage, but there's no pump, there's no ejaculation, so to speak. Okay? Key point. When you recirculate at the point of orgasm, you still have the orgasm, you still have the pleasure, and you can orgasm more than once. In fact, when you recirculate, it builds you up. Instead of the energy going out, the energy is reclaimed, and you become harder, your stamina goes up, and your power goes up. You become satisfied to a degree because the brain is saying, we've had orgasm. But another part of you, your energy goes up. It's pretty interesting stuff. It really takes your sexual performance to the next level because it's very common for men who practice this to make love between 1 and 2 hours on a regular. The important point is, it does not deplete you. You wake up the next morning feeling better than before you had sex. Okay, so in an earlier episode we talked about second puberty. And we talked about the fact that, men don't reach maturity. Most men, even though they become adults, their body's adult, they never reach maturity. They never finish puberty. And most of us, when we think about puberty, we think about facial hair, breast, your voice changes and things like that. But it's a lot deeper than that. And what I'm talking about is a lot of psychological change, energetic change, glandular change, and programming. The programming in your mind and your brain that makes all of this stuff work right. So, semen retention, or the recirculation factor, that's basically 2 reasons why most men can't do it. Number one, the prostate is sort of like a pump, and so you can give it a signal. You can say forward, reverse, basically. Most men don't know how to send the signal to the prostate from the brain to recirculate. It's like the prostate's going to try to do it, but it won't do it at all unless it gets that signal. And that's the tricky part. Then once you learn to send the prostate that signal saying, look, don't send it out, send it in. Most prostates today are not in any condition to do that. So you got to build the prostate up back to minimum specs. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But if you do these 2 things, if you send the signal to the prostate and you say, prostate, recirculate. Well, at the point at which you're going to orgasm, most men aren't really thinking straight. They're not, going to get to that point where they're like, prostate, my prostate, that's probably not going to happen. So you kind of have to get this thing to work before you get into the actual situation. And then it's got to be a situation where it's just a split-second thing, and you just make you make that decision, and you send that signal. And your prostate has to already be having done this a few times in order for it to work. Once it starts working once or twice, it's easy. It's like riding a bike. And then, of course, the prostate has to be able to do it, and we'll explain what we're talking about. But, the lack of finishing puberty, poverty, immature parents who don't know how to do sexual stuff, religious dogma is a big factor, and females are a big part of the problem too, aren't they always? Not really. There's so many things that block this, because half of it is energetic, emotional, nervous system kind of stuff that's operating through the brain. And the other half of it is the physical health and power of the prostate itself, the way it's connected to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Because when you're thinking and you're telling your body to do something like raise your hand, that's the central nervous system. All of this automatic stuff is coming from your secondary nervous system, which is either one side is called the parasympathetic, the other side is called the sympathetic. So most men, when they orgasm, it's involuntary. They don't have control of it. In other words, they get aroused, they make love, they ejaculate. Bam. And they can't really control their body at that point. And they can, but it's just that they have taken the central nervous system connected to the cortex brain. They've taken that out of the loop at that point. And we'll get into that. But basically you can change that. So there's a big gap between actual male sexual activity, what men are actually doing in real life, and the potential of what they can be doing. And that's what semen retention is all about. Because once you start down this path, it causes your prostate to kind of grow or mature, or it gets that ability to multitask. But so does your brain. Your neurochemistry changes a little bit. So does your penis. Your penis kind of learns, or let's just say it becomes more sophisticated. You know, I guess this used to be more widely known a while back, and it's, you know, people just have forgotten how to do this stuff. It used to be much more common. It sounds unique and exotic. No, it used to be regular kind of stuff that men learned during the rites of passage and doing other things like that. I can tell you that women, when they discover a man who can either do semen retention or who has just done a little bit of second puberty and has gotten more of his masculine energy online, women really like that, and they chase after these men ardently with gusto. And these are the men that they're cheating on other men with, even with married women. You're gonna find out that there's a lot of different sides to this dating game. You know, you'll find the women who are very prudish, uppity, and very selective, easily critical of men. Some of them are in the church, some of them are in the club, and you know, they give you this impression that they're very selective, and you know, you got to really work hard to get with them. When you find one of these men, that's not the case. The women are going out of their way to get with them. And you're going to see that while some men are working very hard to have relations with women, some men aren't working that hard at all. There is no conspiracy keeping this knowledge from you. Not at all, no. Yes, it's not something that people talk about a lot because men don't talk about sex a lot. And that's the problem. Men don't talk about anything important a lot, not to other men. They read about stuff, but then they don't discuss it. They get into the barbershop and talk about sports, criticizing some figure, current events, gossip, that's about it. If somebody starts out, you know, a serious topic, especially something like this, everybody will just look at them nod their head like, okay, and they won't respond, the room will go quiet, and then after a while somebody will change the subject. That's usually what happens. Or they'll kind of look at you like you're a little strange and slide over a little bit further away from you, like, I don't want to catch that. But this lack of voice, that men don't have their voice anymore, you pay a price for that. We'll talk about that a little bit more too. I began to speak and write about this topic starting around 1994. I was not well received, not at all. I published 3 books that talk about it. And, I've included it as a subtopic in many speeches and blogs and this, that, and the other. I wasn't the first one. I was probably one of the main ones in the 90s talking about it, and also teaching it to a very small group of men, one at a time kind of thing. But others had talked about it before me. Not a lot, but others had. And now, since there's, it's spread, and I've got so many students who are writing about it, and other people, and my colleagues, they either learned it from me or they learned it from someone else. They talked about it. So that, by the time we got to around 2005, it was a fairly easy subject to find information on. And now, of course, all you got to do is go on the internet and Google it, and boom, you'll see all of these sources. You'll probably see a couple of my quotes in there, whatever. What stopped men from knowing these kind of things, and other things that we're going to talk about in the Chronicles, is they don't search. And why don't they search? They don't think to search because they don't talk. Men have lost their voice, especially black men. They talk about work. They talk about everybody else's stuff, their kids, where's the nearest daycare center, how to get a job, but they don't talk about themselves. They don't talk about themselves. They have lost their voice. And, women talk. Some say too much. But that's smart of women. They talk to each other about everything. And therefore you learn what everybody else knows. And then you start to research. You're like, Johnny can't be right. He's talking about semen retention. That's bull. That's crap. That's some figment, some myth. And so you research it and you find out, oh, it's not myth. So-and-so is doing it. So-and-so is doing it. And you've got all these testimonials. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll find somebody like Grand Trine that teaches it. But men don't talk. They've lost their voice. There's no conspiracy keeping this from you. What's keeping it from you is pride and ego. Let that go. You need to know who to listen to, and you need to be willing to change. If you're going to become a Jedi, if you're going to become the highest and best version of yourself, stop staying stuck in the same belief circle. Meet new friends, talk, listen, get a mentor, and branch out, expand. Men fantasize about, giving some cutie wave after wave of orgasmic bliss and having her matized, and I've had that experience. It's very empowering. I think it took me 7 or 8 years from the time I heard that this was possible until I was actually not just doing it by sometimes, but able to do it at will. I don't remember exactly, but I certainly remember the reaction of the women. Profound. And what separates me from other men is I was not lazy. I didn't do anything supernatural. Well, I did, but not involving this. I researched, went back and talked to people, searched people out, found people, took the classes, read the books, and kept trying until I did it. That's all it takes. And that's a lot of the stuff, we read the movies and we think superheroes become superheroes because, there's an accident in the lab, nuclear explosion, and you become the Hulk. But men who become extraordinary in real life, most of them do so because of hard work, dedication, sense of purpose. That's all that separates them from you. How do we activate? Well, first of all, you have to take a class. You can take a class that's public, or you can go to a person who teaches this privately, and they'll take you on as a solo student, and that's going to cost you. The public classes are not that expensive. And that's how you learn it. What does that involve? When you do decide to do this, how do you know it's going to work? Well, the first step, and there's 3 steps in it, is that you have to be trained so that you can send 2 different types of signals to your prostate right before orgasm. And let me try to make this as simple as possible. The training is a little complicated. The activity itself, doing it, is not complicated at all. It's just thinking about it. But basically it involves being able to send commands to your prostate from the cortex cerebellum parts of the brain and the pituitary gland to the prostate, and have these commands override the command that comes from the limbic brain in the center of your head, which governs your appetites. In other words, it's to make the part of your brain that governs your emotions, appetites, desires, subjective to and under the command of the reason part. Reason, the part that reasons. In other words, you want to be able to overcome the part of your brain that's governed by the appetite. The second thing is to upgrade your prostate. And essentially, we're going to talk about the 3 conditions of the prostate: enlargement, sluggishness, and underdevelopment. You can't have those conditions present if you're trying to send this signal and have it received and acted on. The third thing, excuse me, is to change your posture towards females. Men go into trance when they get around an attractive female. That's basically what's happening. And when they go into trance, the brain function changes. It's the opposite of fight or flight. In fight or flight, the brain becomes more aware and you react faster. And when you go into trance, the thinking part of the brain, the awareness part of the brain begins to shut down. And the right brain, more in dealing with pleasure and dreaming and things like that, begins to take more whatever. So when men get around attractive females, they tend to go into trance. And what you want to do is be aware of that and slow that process down in exercises called recirculation exercises, so that you maintain your awareness a little bit longer until you're able to send that signal, and then you allow yourself to go into trance. The secret to the art of semen retention is in the prostate, and the second part of it is in what we would call the will, the conscious will. In other words, not letting yourself get carried away in that stream of consciousness. It's like so many things. When adrenaline is flowing through your system, like if you're having a fight or if you're threatened or something like that, your involuntary structure starts to take over, and your voluntary command structure starts to diminish, and you lose control of yourself. This is what fighters practice to not to have to happen to them, so that they can maintain control. And so you, essentially, it's like sneezing, it's involuntary. Your heartbeat is involuntary. So you have two systems, the central and the autonomous. So you got the parasympathetic, sympathetic, and when those things take control, it's automatic. You don't have control of it, okay? And so a few seconds before ejaculation, you switch from the central nervous system to the autonomic, to the parasympathetic, sympathetic, right? And basically you go from having control of yourself to having less control of yourself and having more involuntary command structure taken over. And all we're trying to do is mediate that. That's it. We're not necessarily trying to change it completely. We're just trying to mediate that so that just in terms of the prostate, you have a little bit more command of it and a little bit less involuntary functioning. That's it. It's just that simple. So you have three conditions of the prostate that make it hard to do that. Number one, what is called prostate hyperplastia, something like that, or hypertrophy, which means enlargement of the inner sensitive tissues of the prostate. And then you have a condition called sluggish prostate, or hypoplastia. Instead of hyper, which means enlarged, it's hypo, which means slow. And then the third condition is immature prostate. It just hasn't finished developing. And so the inner side of the prostate is more of a, it's hard, and it's more of a, it doesn't have the development of the little cavities inside that it should have, so that the fluids can move back and forth. If any of these conditions are there, the prostate can't react to these two signals coming from the brain. So first thing, you have to be able to send two signals, right? Which we talked about. And you got these three things governing that whether you can send two signals or one. Then after you send the signal, prostate's got to react to the signal. And that's what we're talking about now. You can't have those three conditions: hyperplastia, enlargement of the prostate; sluggish prostate; underdeveloped prostate. All right? Okay. And here's the issue. Most men got both. They can't, their brain's not functioning, they're in trance, and they can't stop the involuntary command. And number two, their prostate's poor health, no power there. So you got a problem. I mean, at the time when you're aroused and you're having sex, you got a very serious hormonal situation where you got testosterone and adrenaline flowing through the bloodstream in much greater volume than normal. And this throws everything off and tends to trigger the involuntary system. And you have to be trained to stop that. You have to be trained, and so that you maintain control of yourself. We're going to see that the male and female orgasmic patterns are identical, except that they're ordered in reverse. So you got these four stages. You have circulation, I guess. Well, I guess the first stage would be saturation, dealing with the heart, and you're basically, you're at this place where a very small part of your body is involved in the arousal and orgasmic process. And you're like, you're mainly dealing with the nerve structures, dealing with the clitoris or the penis. And it only has a very limited ability to bring about spasms and orgasms. And once you pass that point, phase one, if you can, then you get away from the clitoris or penis, and you get to the inner part of the body, dealing with the major gastric plexuses and everything going from the stomach area and the abdomen area up into the limbic brain, right? Which is different from what happens with the clitoris and the penis. So then you're moving to now you're dealing with the G-spot and the prostate ganglia, called the Semen point, which is in the center of the body, versus the periphery where the penis and the clitoris are. So two different pathways into the brain, critically important. So you're orgasming, dealing with the secondary part of the nervous system, and in stage 2, when you get to the circulation phase, you're going inside to the core. Okay, so now this second stage, the energy is circulating, and you're dealing with like the thyroid and the spleen and the heart, all three. Third stage, you got tension being built up, because now, this energy has moved from the heart, you've moved it now to the thyroid and to the spleen and, down here to the adrenals and the gonads and up, into the head. So you got pretty much the whole body almost involved, and you're still dealing with the G-spot prostate, and you've got contracting orgasms now. Then the final stage is release, and so you got the whole body involved. You got the clitoris, the outside, and the G-spot, or the penis and the prostate. So you got outside and inside, male and female, yin and yang, whatever you want to call it, all involved in orgasm at the same time. That's when you get these intense full body orgasms. And so the point that we're making is that, most men, only the penis, outer nervous system is involved in orgasm. Once the prostate is healthy and it's getting this double signal, so now you got the prostate involved in it too. And it makes for much more intense orgasms. The man can have orgasms more than once, and this whole piece. So it's a totally different way that you look at this whole piece about male orgasm, male ejaculation, and having this option. And what we find is that this type of a man, more evolved, is at peace. And the unevolved, the juvenile male, the more, which is what we find more often, is angry. And I believe, in my opinion, that anger is the emotion of the impotent man. He is angry because he lacked the power to stop something or to do something. And this is true, in terms of his sexuality. He lacks the power to fully realize his sexual goals. But what he doesn't understand is that, wisdom is the origin of power. And, if you don't have wisdom, then the other source of power is numbers. You got to have a bunch of people in order to defeat your enemy or to achieve what it is you're trying to do. But most men today, they refuse their voice. They won't talk to other men. They won't let men tell them anything. He don't want to read no books. He don't want to educate himself. He don't want to pay for a class. So he's like intentionally dumb. What can you do with this guy? And he won't unite with other men. So his two sources of power, wisdom and numbers, he rejects. So he remains impotent and angry. I urge you, don't do that. Don't do that. Seize your power and become potent. All right? And this whole thing of semen retention is one way to get to that place. My name is Master Yao, and these are the Chronicles of Master Yao. Good fortune to you. Great good fortune.